All right. I am calling the meeting to order at 6 p.m. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance and then the Goethe Pledge. Please stand, place your right hand over your heart, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Casey and Biggie, if you guys want to do the Goethe Pledge.
As a citizen of the world, I will follow Goethe's circle of learning. Curiosity opens my mind, ideas lead to knowledge, responsible choices show respect, cooperation strengthens others, learners are courageous, empathy creates community.
Let me see. Am I muted? Or can you
Now
hear
we
me?
can hear you.
You're
Okay,
good.
good. Then, als ein Bürger dieser Welt folge ich dem Kreis des Lernens. Neugierig, ideenreich, respektvoll, kooperativ, mutig, empathisch.
Thank you. Moving on to roll call. Frank?
Yep.
Danielle? Danielle?
I'm here. I couldn't unmute somehow, but now I can.
We can hear you.
Pete
Yep, I'm here.
and Beacon? Beacon, you there?
I am here.
Yep, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Is there a second?
I
Second.
The second is by Danielle. All in favor? Frank?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
Pete?
Yes.
And Beacon?
Yes.
There's an aye for me as well. At this time, we are opening the meeting to public comments. Casey, do we have any speakers?
So just as a reminder, if you would like to speak during public comment, please raise your hand using the button in the participant list of Zoom. So you'll see a little raise hand button there, and I'll call on you in the order that your hand is raised. Francis Yang.
Hey, hold on. Okay, good. I'm in a quiet room right now. So I just wanted to say I'm so grateful for how administration has been handling the pandemic. I have been able to attend other school Zooms as a guest, pretending I was a parent. Luckily, I have friends who were able to allow me because I just wanted to see how other schools were doing things. And I just wanted to say the last presentation that they gave was Thursday. I was so impressed. I shared the PowerPoint with another, it's not a GPA, it's PTA president. And they were shocked that our charter school was already planned out, already ready to go if we were to start next month. So I just want to say thank you to the administration, especially to Dr. Jones, also for being transparent, how you guys are handling the financials, how you're handling basically everything you're doing to help the kids improve in school. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. Casey, do we have another speaker?
We do not.
All right, and moving on to consent, I would like to make a motion to approve the board meeting minutes from January 25th. All in favor? Frank?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
Pete?
Yep.
Beacon?
Casey, are you hearing me? I said yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving into the board meeting. Just before we get started, I would like to just remind my fellow members and of course everyone else that I think there's a lot of I've sensed a lot of tension going around on reopening the school. I know it's a hot topic. I'm not sure how other board members feel, but I would just like to make sure that in our discussion today on the first item and obviously for every other, that we follow due process. I will give everyone a couple of minutes to share their points. We'll keep doing round robins until everyone has been heard. If you don't have anything to say, then you can yield your time, or just yield your time to another board member if you wish. So I'd like to start off tonight by talking about reopening of the school. I think it's a very exciting time for our school and for all schools in the Los Angeles area. The good news that we've heard in the last couple of weeks has been that LA County is releasing the lockdown of schools in the county. I've had several conversations with Chris about the topic. I think this is a great time for the board to get involved and share your points of view. And I'll just start off with mine, which is that, the agenda topic is reopening our school as quickly, safely, and responsibly as possible. That's my hope, how the administration is tackling this. It should be their number one priority to get the kids in the classroom as quickly, safely, and responsibly as possible, mitigating as much risk as possible as well. With that, I will hand it off to the fellow board members. Tell me if you agree, disagree, if you have more finer points. I know Chris would love to jump in. I'm going to take some notes, and then Chris, if you wouldn't mind just holding on to your thoughts until every board member has spoken, and then you could answer all their questions when it's your turn. Does that sound good?
I can do it, I think.
Okay, try your hardest. I know you're.
I know, it's brutal.
All right, with that, I will yield to Frank.
I will yield to Danielle first. Let's start there, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Of course.
My comments are pretty quick. So I spoke with Dr. Jones last week, and then I also attended the parent town hall last week on the reopening. And I think, and by the way, I don't know if this was mentioned, but the attendance was pretty great. I mean, I think there were about 100 parents in attendance, which is really high, I would think. I thought that the session was very informative and really explained a lot of the different potential options really clearly, and knowing that it's also pretty complicated, right? Because there really is no clear path. But I think, even as a parent at the school, there, a lot of parents prior to were very concerned, the LAUSD situations and everything. But I think this put a lot of families at ease, knowing that everything was being done possible in order to ensure a safe return. And I think something that was really exciting to hear and very impressive is that, the focus for students when they are back is to have a lot of that SEL element that they've been missing out on because digital doesn't really afford that opportunity. And so that was encouraging, that was really exciting to hear. I think one other thing statistically that was mentioned was the fact, the teacher and admin surveys of if teachers and admin had the opportunity to receive the vaccine, would they be willing and open to returning to school? And I think this data there was that 69% of teachers had agreed to that and felt comfortable. And so I know there was like that lingering 31% that would be more of a case-by-case basis. But I was also wondering if, maybe there's more information around that, if it was really just specifically because, those 31% of teachers or admin had like specific situations at home that would put them at higher risk. But really impressive. And I'm looking forward to hearing more as we have more information.
Thank you, Danielle. Pete?
So a couple questions or comments, I guess, piggybacking on the last one. So I understand the results of the survey in terms of getting vaccinated, but what's the general view of teachers in terms of coming back to in-person teaching anyway, irrespective of whether they want to be vaccinated or not? Do we have a sense of, is this like 100% Are they 100% comfortable, or is it the same 70-30 split? What's the what do we know about that?
All right, Pete, if that's all right, we'll go to Beacon and then we'll let Chris answer all the questions. Sound good? All right, Beacon.
I have no comments or questions. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Jones. I think the two questions are very similar about teachers. What is the comfort level of the teachers returning to the school with vaccines, without vaccines, and what are your thoughts on that?
There's definitely not an easy, a sense of ease coming back on campus from the staff. We did survey, and we tried to do it in a couple different ways. But one of the questions was, do you feel comfortable returning to campus? And we asked that one back in December. And it was, I think it was about 60% at that point were not yet, not fully comfortable coming back to campus. I think there's a sense that we are experiencing some success with distance learning in terms of academics, but there's not, there's certainly something to be left to be desired with regard to social emotional and just socialization of kids, and that's a really important piece. And so everybody is kind of working back and forth. There are definitely some staff members who are concerned about vaccinations, but the numbers of our staff are almost exactly what the numbers are nationwide. So it's not any real anomaly there. But we are certainly as a administration encouraging vaccinations. I think the key things that I was trying to bring across last Thursday night in the presentation is that, first of all, we have to be looking to what our Prop 39 authorizer and landlord is allowing on the campus. But I was trying to also share the point that the political winds are shifting and swirling right now, and that is opening up some possibilities where LA Unified is trying to push forward with getting campuses open. And where we see them pushing for this is in the cohort model. And so we spent some time at the presentation talking about the difference between the cohort model of serving kids and the hybrid model of serving kids, or coming back full together. And where we think we're gonna be where the LAUSD campuses are going to open first is for the cohort model. And so I want to be sure everyone understands that that's trying to serve our most neediest students. And while we might, the state clearly says examples of what needy students would be, which would mean students in special education, students might be on 504s, students who might be English learners. Those are some categories that they mentioned, but they do leave it up to the schools to have a lot of sway in deciding what exactly is needy. But I think that's where we would start with is our defined neediest kids, but we could also look to how we can expand that further. The limitation under the cohort model is that at any given time, you cannot have more than 25% of the campus, students on the campus. But that does not mean it's always the same 25%. So it could be different on different days. But that's the way that one is set up. And teachers under the cohort model are limited to 2 cohorts of no larger than 12 that they can be involved with. So the cohort size for students is 12, and then the teacher or staff member can be a part of that. They can be actually a part of 2 different cohorts. And so our next steps right now, other than trying to ride the waves of what's happening day by day, is we are meeting, we have a meeting set up with our teachers, actually, and instructional aides on Wednesday, where we're going to delve into some of the more details of what we painted in broad strokes on Thursday, and how would that really how would it be possible to really roll those things out and get into much more detail about schedules, which is kind of where the rubber meets the road. So that's our next step moving forward. I think I was really appreciative that there was such a large crowd and we were able to talk to such a large group of people last week. But I have that this is only the start of a very long process of trying to do exactly what Yasir mentioned, which is reopening quickly, safely, and responsibly. So I'll open up to any more questions and I'll stop talking.
Thank you, Chris. I just want to make sure that not only for the membership, but for the stakeholders in attendance, it's abundantly clear. I know Chris talked about curriculum and schedule. He's being very proactive about it. But I think there are a few more steps that the organization has to overcome. I think the two primary hurdles right now are vaccinations for the teaching staff. And that is, if Pfizer vaccines are taken, you are looking at least from the first one that they're scheduled to take to the second one, you're looking at most likely a 4-week delay. And again, the news is always changing, but just before the meeting, I read that they don't believe for essential workers, vaccines are going to be available, essential workers first, but then teachers until at least the first week of March. So I think, it's a tentative consideration that we need to understand, which goes back to the question raised by my fellow members, which was, teachers and vaccinations and what does that look like? Who's going to return? So Chris, thank you for answering that. I think what you mentioned is a majority of teachers are willing to come back. I think that the board and the stakeholders need to recognize that from their first date of vaccination to their second booster, that is also going to be a 4-week delay. Next hurdle is obviously LAUSD. We are on a co-located campus. And I think there was a lot of conversation and discussion about, we're a charter school, why can't we just open? And then there was also information out there saying that, it's about custodians, it's about cleanliness. And I asked Chris very, very directly, Chris, if you had a teacher that just, took the keys and opened the doors, can they teach starting tomorrow? And his answer was no, because we would not be allowed by Los Angeles Unified School District. And I think that's the crux of the next hurdle, which is that we cannot move forward with any kind of in-person learning, whichever model, cohort, hybrid, blend, without the expressed authorization from LAUSD that we can return to the campus. So again, cart before the horse. I know you guys are getting into the rubber meeting the road and the scheduling and the programming of the curriculum, but I think it's should be reflected in the notes that there are several other challenges to overcome before we actually talk about opening the campus. So with that, I will yield to Frank.
Man, your timing is perfect. I just had an apple. So I actually have no further questions or comments, and I yield my time.
Thank you, Frank. Danielle?
No further questions for me.
Pete?
No further questions.
Beacon?
Nothing for me, thank you.
All right. Chris, I'm gonna let you speak for a few more minutes. Is there anything you need from the board at this time?
Well, like you said, the LAUSD we're watching that very closely, and there is some indication that some shifting is on the horizon. So that's we have to watch that closely, but that doesn't mean you're ready the next day. The other big piece that we have is rolling out testing for students. Now, fortunately, we've already rolled out testing for staff. It's available to our staff. We've done it the past 2 weeks on Fridays. And so that's COVID-19 testing. It's available to all of our staff on a weekly basis now. We can roll that out. So for instance, on a cohort basis, if we identify specific kids that would be eligible at some point, we could get started on the getting kids signed up and registered. So we'd have that ready to go and it wouldn't be yet another hurdle. It's always a tricky thing when you say, hey, we will just want to be ready, but we're not ready yet, but we want to be ready, without getting people too excited. But that's kind of what we're trying to do is kind of move that the next thing forward. So from the board itself, right now, no, I don't think there's any action or anything needed to be taken. We are pushing forward with trying to see how we can do this safely. We're working with other charter schools and with CCSA as well, to guide this process. It is literally a day by day thing. And this last week in particular has changed literally every single day. Something new has come along. And so we're just trying to follow that as we go.
Thank you, Chris. I have one more question. Are you aware of any other charter schools that are open right now in LA County?
Open as in under a cohort, which is technically not considered open according to the state. There are a few LA Unified authorized charters that are on private sites that have done some small amounts of cohort modeling. I'm not aware of any that have gone as far as a hybrid opening. And so I was on a call today with a few that are actually on private sites and looking to roll it out in the next within the next few weeks. But the others who are on co-located sites are not able to do that at this point. And we'll see how things unfold.
Okay.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
Sorry, I don't know if we were going around again or not, but before we left the topic. So I think one thing that might be useful is and I don't know what kind of connections anybody may have, but certainly outside of LAUSD and if California is not broad enough, there are many states where schools have been pretty much open since December, and certainly well, actually most of the school year, so even before December. So if it's possible to reach out to either charter schools out in Arkansas or other states that have a lot of schools that are open, or even public schools, there might be some good lessons learned there in terms of how to be open and maintain open and safety and of course how well it works to shut down and reopen again. What I've heard from states is that it's actually gone pretty well, and some states have had less disruption from COVID than they have typically from hurricanes that come through. These are southern states. So anyway, if we can reach out to somebody somewhere else, that might be useful for us here.
Thank you, Pete. If we want to do another round, Frank, do you have anything else?
Well, the only, if the prediction of the, New York Times or anything is somewhat accurate, it looks like that we reach herd immunity with immunization around September. So, my expectations are that we are open with school opening, really, and everything else seems attainable, but yet a stretch goal. My personal opinion.
Yeah. Danielle?
Oh, I said nothing for me. Sorry. When I mute and unmute, it's sometimes.
No. Beacon?
Nothing for me, thank you.
All right, and just before we move on, and this is the last time I'll say something, is that I think the expectation for the stakeholders needs to be that because we are dealing with LAUSD, I do not anticipate you know, our opening to be dictated by the quickness or the responsive. Obviously the responsiveness of our administration is critical to filling out all the paperwork and doing the process. But I imagine that it's going to, they're going to flip a switch and they're going to say all charter schools that are co-located can open on this date. So I just want to make sure that everyone, you know, all the stakeholders keep that in mind, that, you know, everyone's working as hard and as fast and being as responsive as possible on our side to open the school safely. But that ultimately, even when we go through all the vaccines and establish the vaccination program for the teachers, that it will be up to LAUSD to say, yes, you can open. And most likely that's going to be a you know, carte blanche for the co-located campuses, not case by case. And if there's nothing further, if I can just get a thumbs up from the board members, unless they want to say something. Okay, thank you. All right, Chris, we are now moving on to the ED report.
Okay. Let me jump back here. Okay. All right. Well, as always, we start off with enrollment, and interestingly enough, we are at the same spot we were at last month, which is at 418 students. I think we gained one and lost one. But we are very much holding steady on our enrollment, which is not what I'm hearing from other places, both district schools and charter schools. People are having a hard time holding on to people. We certainly have seen it where people have left the state and the country in our case. So that's, you know, we've lost a number, but we've also brought students in. So it's been pretty much a wash in terms of our raw numbers since the start of the year. We did we know we're holding on to that 416 as the budgeted number. That's what the state has designated. I've mentioned this several times. We are not eligible for enrollment growth funding. We don't really have much here, but we did apply to see if we would qualify for it. We did get a notice back saying we did not. So here are the actual numbers, and it gives you an idea. These are important numbers for us as we're looking ahead towards next year's planning. And that's really where I want to lead to here. Last month, I talked a little bit about the budget process and different things that happen as we prepare for next year's budget. And so, as mentioned during that report, we are currently working on those enrollment projections related to our lottery offerings. And as such, the this is something that ties into not only how many students we have currently and we're projecting. We're also collecting information right now on our intent to return forms, which is a big piece of this. And then finally, bringing it all together with what we're expecting in terms of lottery. It is not thus far a strong lottery season as we are dealing with getting people onto campus. We can't do tours. They're all virtual, those types of things. So that's an issue we're putting all into the mix. And more detail on next year's budget will be coming next month in March. I do want to give a point about the current year budget in that, and this came up when we talked about the at the finance committee. We are going to be planning for a budget adjustment in March. So just want you to be aware that won't show in the current financials, but as we're preparing the financials, that'll be the February financials that you'll see in March. We're talking about doing an adjustment that shows the effects on both income and expenditure as of mid-year relating to COVID-19. So we're down on some income that is related to this, particularly in the area of fundraising. We are also down on expenditures. Costs are down because of COVID-19. And so we'll be putting all that together, and that'll be a part of the update in March when we get to finances. I wanted to give a quick notice about site expansion. We did mention that we don't know what we're going to be exactly offered in the final offer come April for Prop 39, but we want to have opportunities, if there are any, to explore if any exist, of what would be overflow space if we have a need for more space and are able to fill it. The current cost for leasing off-site, and this is based on current market conditions, is about 3 times our current pro rata share for Prop 39, which is pretty difficult on our budget. In fact, pretty impossible on our budget to do on an ongoing basis, particularly for the entire school. So looking to relocate the entire school right now really is not a financial option. But overflow space of 1 or 2 or even 3 classrooms, that is something is within our budget. So we've been looking to see what's out there. Not a lot at the moment. We've explored 3 different sites for potential overflow space. 2 of those sites, which are zoned correctly, are unfortunately not willing to sublease. One site that is not properly zoned is expressed an interest, but I'm not sure that will work with the zoning that they have. That is something we're going to need to keep an eye on for the future, because there is a change in the market space, the market for office space, and what does it look like after we're all back, and how many businesses are actually going to be going back into that office space, and is that going to give us an opportunity to see office prices come down, which then we might be able to do some kind of conversion, which would of course require a lot of political will for getting rezoning. But it's something we should be keeping our eyes open and seeing what's out there. But I do want you guys to know we've been looking, and thus far don't see anything that's viable at this point. And I think I'll keep going. Did want to give the board an update. We started our strategic planning task force last week on Tuesday, and we are now meeting every Tuesday. The purpose of the committee is to review the previous strategic plan, making recommendations to the Board of Trustees of what to update on that plan. All decisions, of course, will be with the Board of Trustees, but this will be a group that is looking closely at that. And we do have 2 members of the board that are participating in that. So thank you to Beacon and Frank for a few months ago agreeing that you would join us in this venture. And there are 13 representatives coming from GPA, the Parent Advisory Committee, Board of Trustees. We have a good showing. We have a good number of staff that are there. I think there's 4 staff members, teachers who are part of it, and then the administration as well. Our meetings are on Tuesdays. So tomorrow is our next meeting. We meet at 4 o'clock, and we'll be doing that on a regular basis. We started with a review of the entire plan. And then our first focus is going to be on vision and mission statements and making updates for those. So this is going to be a long process, but we want to do it right, and we're heading forward on that. I'm going to give one more, and then I'm going to take questions. Academic calendar update. usually in February, we have a calendar that LAUSD has provided for us to approve. Normally we would have done that, but there is no approved calendar at this point. LAUSD is in fact considering two options, both of which increase the school day by 10 days next year. We don't know if they're going to be doing that or not, but we have to know what the parameters are of when they're going to be on campus, and match accordingly. We could certainly choose to follow suit with 10 days of additional school next year, and I think we would be able to pay this with learning loss funding. So I think it's something we could pay for the teachers for that extra 10 days. And the question is whether it would be starting earlier in August, which may or may not be driven by COVID issues. Or are they doing some kind of shortening of the winter break and some other holidays throughout the year? So we don't know the answer to this yet. We do hope and expect to see that by next month. We hope to have that as an agenda item next month. So I'm going to pause there because we have one last piece, which I'm going to shift it over to Scott. So I'm going to open it up to questions.
Chris, about the strategic planning task force, how many members are on there right now?
13.
13 members. How many parents are on the planning committee?
5.
All right, thank you. Frank?
Just one comment in regards to the real estate situation. The zoning is the bottleneck, right? So because it requires political will on the west side, and just we have to keep an eye on that one. Thank you.
Danielle?
I have a question regarding the academic calendar. Understanding the option of potentially starting 2 weeks early, which would potentially be impacted by COVID. Are they also exploring ending 2 weeks later in June? And then the other question is, do we have to follow what LAUSD does in this case? Given that, it might be argued that, and again, this is just hypothetical, it might be argued that Goethe didn't experience learning loss during this past year and at the level that LAUSD schools did.
So first thing, the two options that they have, I'm going to refer you to the LAUSD website. They do have them both listed there. So that's a place where you can get the details of exactly where they're talking about.
Okay.
I don't believe they're talking about going later into June at the end of the year with either one of those. But we were kind of waiting to see. There is a chance to give input, and we're certainly folks who would be affected by it, so we could give input. More to your question of, are we totally beholden on calendar? This is a tricky question. The direct answer is no. Early on in the experience of Goethe, they actually did their own calendar and did not follow LAUSD's calendar. They found it very, very difficult to be on a different calendar schedule than Marina Del Rey Middle School in actually functioning. That being said, the choice of whether to expand our school year is something we would still, if we chose to expand by 5 days, or we chose to do it by 7, or not at all, or by 10, I think those are all questions we can answer for ourselves within the parameter of the calendar as they set it. So that's what I would recommend. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
Pete?
Yeah, I think that was, so I think the reason they don't consider adding at the end of the school year is because it's well known that once the state assessments take place, that the rest of the school year is pizza parties and yoga. And I'm not saying that's Goethe. I'm just saying that unfortunately. So 2 weeks out of at the end probably won't be much benefit. believe. But I also agree with the conversation that you just had in terms of identifying whether or not Goethe wants to or needs to do the full 10 days or not. I mean, there's something to be said for easing back into things. And it's interesting that LAUSD has limited these choices, and a couple of things that are interesting about it as well is that they've arbitrarily decided on 10 days. I'm not sure where that amount of extra schooling comes into play, given that's not the amount of learning loss that's been recorded in the few studies that have come out. And secondly, everything we know about teacher effectiveness and teaching effectiveness is that if you have good instruction following a year of less than effective instruction, that you can more than make that up within the parameters of a regular academic school year. So if we assume that this most recent school year was ineffective, then we would expect that for the most part, if we had good instruction, that we would adequately catch up and be where we need to be. So if we assume that that's the case for Goethe teachers, then I could see not needing those extra 10 days.
Thank you, Pete. Beacon?
Yeah, I trust the admin team to make this decision. And I would just add that looking at this from the same lens of, social, emotional, and mental health of the kids, who I can speak for my own children and say they'd be happy to have 10 days of pizza parties and yoga with their friends right now. So just to keep that in mind, but I trust you guys to make the right decision on this one.
Great, thank you. Chris, you want to move to iReady?
Yep, and I'm going to go ahead and pass this over in just a moment. I think this was a question that came up earlier as we approved the funding for iReady as part of our learning loss mitigation funds, and the board had asked if we could tell a little bit about it. So this is going to be the short overview. It's a matter of a few slides here that we are telling about the program itself. But we think this program could be a real game changer for us in many different ways. And so I'm going to let Scott lead the way through this, and then let you know that we're also going to be bringing back some data for you to look at a later meeting, probably in March, to be able to see where our students are performing. So Scott?
All right, thank you. So I'm going to try to condense what I think is about a 20-minute presentation down to 5 minutes. So hang on for the ride, and then we'll do questions at the end. And Casey, if you find at any point you want to interject to add, or if I missed anything or correct anything, that'd be great. So in response to, you can stay on the first slide for a second.
Okay.
In response to Assembly Bill 1505, they gave a list of assessments that count as verifiable data. And what we had been using as our internal benchmark assessments, Galileo, was not on that state approved list. So we as an admin team started the exploration, doing our due diligence, reaching out to teachers, other leaders at districts and charter schools, and exploring our different options for our internal benchmark assessments. And that's what led us to iReady. Let me just make this bigger so I can see. There we go. So when we talk about our multi-tiered systems of support, this is our school's holistic approach to how we support all students in different levels with their behavioral and academic success. So at the bottom is our universal design for learning, and that's how we differentiate and scaffold our instruction for all learners in the classroom. We have our positive behavioral interventions and supports, the way we design our IB curriculum, the professional development and teamwork and collaboration amongst our staff, our GPA and our parent involvement, the collaboration we have with the community, of course, our social emotional learning and our triadic agreements are all under this umbrella of how we support our students. One part in particular is response to intervention, and that's where iReady comes in. A response to intervention is really how we support all of our students with their academic success. And when we talk about RTI, there's 4 main components we want to make sure we're covering. The first is that we have ongoing students assessment and progress monitoring, that we have tiered instruction taking place inside the classroom to prevent any learning loss or any students falling behind, that we have a multi-tiered system of evidence-based interventions, and that we have data-based decision-making. And iReady checks all of these boxes for us. Thank you. So the first major component of iReady is these diagnostic assessments, which will be our internal benchmarks. It is in two areas, reading and English language arts and math. Our students take the diagnostic not for a grade, not for a score, but to help us determine their areas of strength and their areas of need. The assessment is adaptive, so it does start each student with grade level questions and then adjust based on how they answer those questions. So if they answer a couple questions correctly, the questions get harder. And if they answer incorrectly, they get a little bit easier. And what that helps us to do is to find those gaps in their learning that we need to help fill in. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay.
So after the diagnostic assessments, we get so much data. And I think that is what we're most excited about. Is this actionable data? It should say for all stakeholders. It's not just for teachers and parents, but it's for administration, it's for our instructional assistants, it's for the board. And at the upper grades, it's also for our students to be able to monitor and track their own progress and success. So what data do we get from those diagnostics? First of all, we get an overall student grade level equivalency for each subject area, ELA and math. We get performance level data on these subject area bands. So for English language arts, that's phonological awareness, vocabulary, comprehension of literary and informational texts. For math, those subject area bands, numbers and operations, algebra, algebraic thinking, measurement, and geometry. We also get broken down mastery reports for each Common Core state standard. So it shows us whether each student has a limited understanding of the standard, a mastery of that standard, or we really need to fill in their learning in that standard. We also get Lexile and Quantile levels. Lexile level is what we'll pair with our FONIS and Pinnell. It really helps parents and teachers find leveled books to meet students where they are and help extend their learning. And then the Quantile level is just a measure that indicates mastery of grade level material in math. We're also excited about the parent reports that we get from this, which we will be able to share with parents. We'll be also able to use them at conferences and parent meetings to not only discuss student progress, but what we can do in class and outside of class to fill in those gaps in learning. And then we can also use them to track progress throughout the year. The system will also give instructional groupings to our teachers. So it groups students based on like needs so that we can really target instruction for whole class, but also in those small groups that our teachers do so well. Each student is given, sorry, Chris, there's two more bullets there. I just can't see them. It also gives our students some growth goals. There we go. So we can give them, thank you. So they can see where they are now. And then at the end of the year, they can see where they've gone. And then I think what we are most excited about, which the other assessment programs we looked at do not provide, are these personalized online learning pathways for students. These personalized online learning pathways give, after the diagnostic, each student a combination of lessons that really target their areas of need. Each lesson gives explicit scaffolded instruction using real-world scenarios. It's also different by grade level. So whereas first graders have a cast of monsters and fun little cartoon characters that they get to know that teach them the lessons, the upper elementary and middle school kids have a different cast of characters that are a little cooler, and the lessons are embedded in things that they like to do, like texting or conversations about things that they are interested in. These lessons also give guided practice to reinforce the skills after the direct instruction. And then there's a check for understanding at the end of each lesson that teachers can use for progress monitoring. And all of these lessons target and address the Common Core state standards. In addition to that online personalized learning pathway, teachers can also assign lessons within the program, within the platform that align with what they're doing in class. So it can help to reinforce learning or extend learning of content area knowledge and skills for the kids. All right, next slide. So going back to our RTI pyramid, we're really talking about 3 levels here. So we're talking about what we're doing as a whole school to help support students, what teachers are doing in the classroom, and then what we're doing for individual students to help support their learning. This will also help us provide support for our English learners, and we can also use this data to help us write IEP goals. So tier 1 at the bottom there is universal core instruction. So this is what we're doing for all students in the classroom. This data will help inform teachers of what they need to reteach, whether there's opportunities for extension. It is what they're doing for every kid. Tier 2 are those targeted instruction and interventions that we give when students are a little behind or need a little boost on their content area knowledge and skills. It's really to support them and reduce their risk of falling into tier 3. And when we get to tier 3, we're talking about individual supports, targeting students who really, really need help. So tier 3 is where we can talk about initiating a student support team meeting where the teachers, parents, and administration work and talk about what we can implement to help them. We measure the student progress and reconvene. And we create highly specific goals to target these students. So these are our highest need of students. What we want is for 80% of our kids to be on the bottom, about 15% in tier 2, and 5 to 8% in that tier 3 who really need more intensive individualized interventions. All right. So we are just getting started with this. Last week, all of our students in grades 1 through 7 took the diagnostic assessments. We still have a few finishing up this week. As soon as they're done, and first grade has already started with this, but all students will get those individual learning pathway lessons on the iReady learning platform. Our teachers have access to that data already, and some of them are exploring in there, but we're gonna have a professional development from iReady about how to use the data and how to use the reports to support all students' needs and growth. Our parents will receive the information regarding their child's strengths and areas for growth in that report. In our upcoming spring conferences, we'll be able to have discussions around this. And of course, us as administration and the board will use this data to help us inform decisions. We'll be able to follow up with families of students with high needs in that tier 3, and we can use the data to help support teachers and parents. So we're going to continue to have students work on those individualized lessons online. This is something to which they'll also have access over the summer, which we think is going to be a critical component to mitigating learning loss. We're going to use the data to facilitate discussions and conversations with all of our stakeholders, and we will continue to administer this diagnostic assessment 3 times per school year in the same way that we have done with Galileo. And with that,
Thank you, Scott. So I have some questions, and this is more for Chris. So this platform would be replacing PowerSchools, is that correct?
No. This would be replacing Galileo for the assessment that Galileo provides. So PowerSchool is our student information system. This is an assessment system that also does more than what Galileo ever allowed us to. Because it provides a means to individualize intervention, as Scott was talking about, for the student after they take the diagnostic, whereas Galileo just gave us numbers.
Got it. So it's basically a test taking tool that drills down, tests on the Common Core program and California requirements, and then teachers can act on it. Okay. I have no other questions, Frank.
One question, and that is adaptability has often something to do with ease of going through a software system and using it, right? So I have seen a lot of rollouts which are promised to be like, ooh, yeah, Eureka. This is the catch-all tool. So how usable? I mean, it seems to be very complex in addressing all the needs we have from an outsider, or if you look at like from management by objectives perspective. But how easy is it to use on a application level?
I think you have two really good points there, Frank. The first one is this isn't the end all be all. We still have our other data points. Our teachers are still doing formative and summative assessments in the classroom. They're still using Fontes and Pinnell. We're still doing our math program online. So this is one great data point and resource we have. From what we have found, and from what I've seen, and I know Ms. Cheatham has used this in the past, it is very easily accessible for kids. They can log in. Once they know they're logged in, they take the diagnostics, they just log in, they see the platform, there's a reading and a math, and they can choose what they want to do. There's little brain break games in there, and they become quite smitten with it. We can actually track student progress. And when I did this in the past at another school, we had students who were logging in at 9, 10 at night to complete lessons. So I think it's pretty easy to use for the kids. In terms of administration, and Casey, you can speak to this, but I think it's a little easier for us, and it gives us more accessible data than our previous internal assessment system did.
Yeah, I'll just share. Scott is previously familiar with iReady from the schools he worked at before Goethe, but I am brand new to it and have been working with Galileo my entire time here at Goethe. And I will just say immediately, the interface is so much more user-friendly than Galileo is. The reports that we're able to generate come up much more quickly. We don't have that lag time between the test being finished and the reports being generated as we do with Galileo. And the information and the way it's presented is really clear and easy to understand. One of the biggest challenges with Galileo was it would give all this really good data, but it took some time to kind of sort through and sift and find the pieces that we really needed to do our planning, but also the pieces that when parents were asking questions about, it was a little hard to really show them the complete picture, but the graphs that are generated through iReady, the reports that we're able to run are really straightforward and easy to understand. So in just the last month of getting to know iReady, I am fully on board and very happy with how easy it is to use and interact with.
Is still time for a follow-up question?
Frank, why don't we wait until I know
okay.
Pete's chomping at the bit.
I don't have a question, so Frank could take mine if you want.
So thank you. And it probably falls in Pete's corner, and I apologize for encroaching in your data science. But how do we translate baselines where we are and where we want to be? Do you have a development? And maybe you can answer that with Pete. But I would be interested. What's the baseline? What's the goal? And how do we want to get the school community using this tool more transparency to our goal? So that's my question.
Right, if you can just hold on to answer that. Beacon, I'm going to let you go first if you have any questions, and then I'll hand off to Pete.
No, I've heard personally from teachers that iReady is their favorite, not at our school, at other schools. And so I'm excited that you guys have access to something easy that you really get a lot of information from. And I'm looking forward to hopefully helping close some of those gaps that we have in outcomes. So thank you.
All right, Pete, I will yield the rest of my time to you, and you have the floor.
Out of curiosity, did California provide a reasonings for what programs were, or what assessment systems were deemed acceptable and not deemed acceptable? Were there criteria?
They did not give reasons. They provided in December a list of 10 different assessments, and that was it. And it's not even a definitive list. It could change. So it was a list of 10 in December that we got.
Interesting. All right. So I think iReady has a lot of potential. I think one of the first things that's going to be really useful about it are the Lexiles and Quantiles, particularly the Lexiles because they're a little bit more developed than the Quantiles, although Quantiles is coming along pretty well too. And I think it might be useful, maybe not now, but or when you have data, maybe in a couple board meetings, I think it would be useful for the rest of the board is not only to see kind of the Frank's questions in terms of understanding where students are, but just an understanding of what Lexiles are, and Lexile's ability to monitor growth in a much better fashion than most assessment systems can or scores can. And what's nice about Lexiles is that Lexiles don't actually go from elementary school through high school and into college and into career. So we know what Lexiles are required to be successful at community college, what Lexiles are required to be successful at a four-year college, what kind of Lexiles different kind of jobs require. So Lexiles are really interesting because you can set a path towards where students are headed. Now our students, will be a ways away from high school and college, but still that progress can really be placed onto something that's meaningful, because it isn't just, oh, well, you need to be at 1400 when you graduate high school, or 1200 or whatever, I forget what the values are, because that doesn't mean anything to anybody. But when you see that, well, you need to be at 1200 because that's the level of text that is required to be able to understood in community college, that certainly means something. And so you can be leveled along age and grade. I think using it for recommending books and levels of books during the summer is particularly useful as well. So I think there's a lot of potential benefits, particularly for the Lexile component of it. I think we should really take advantage of that. The concerns I have, though, is I certainly understand, and I noted this earlier, but I think it's important to reiterate that iReady, we need to make sure that iReady is there to supplement instruction for kids in the tiered and RTI model, and not to supplant it. Again, I'm not suggesting that that's going to be the mode of teachers at Goethe, but I think we can all find all of us who've been in schools can find examples where kids are shuffled off to do their programs as a means of support without much specific interaction and follow-up from teachers, and that would be very concerning, because I don't think that model is going to be successful. The other thing I think you want to be paying attention to, I think there's probably less evidence on this, at least the evidence on iReady, I'm not entirely sure, but because it is computer adaptive, a lot of computer adaptive assessment systems tend to potentially adapt. It's probably block adaptive, but they tend to adapt away from the standards because it is diagnostic. They have off grade level items, which is perfectly fine, but their cut points oftentimes tend to be a little bit lax in making predictions towards specific proficiency cut points on the state assessments. Because my guess is that this assessment that iReady is not, what we have is not specifically aligned to California STAR system, and so I think we want to look at those projections in terms of state assessment results a little more conservatively. And so I don't know how they present those, if they present bands or probabilities, or I have no idea what they present. But once we get to that point where you're using it to look to see how students will do on the STAR assessments, I think you want to be sure to kind of project down somewhat, because it's been my experience that all of these diagnostics tend to be a little bit optimistic. And we don't want to be caught surprised when projections are one thing and the actual results are something else. So those are just a few comments about what I see some of the benefits and challenges for iReady.
Thank you, Pete. I think it should be restated that, and to Pete's points, this is the start of something, a better way to measure and assess our program and its efficacy to the student population. Chris, I just have one last question, and that is, how flexible is this platform at making it malleable so that it is, falls in line with a Goethe flavor of a student performance assessment, thinking about the things that Pete has just mentioned as far as, you know, the Lexiles and the Quantiles and you know, predictive abilities of this application. How flexible is it, and will it meet our needs to make sure that we measure our academic success according to IB, language immersion, and the strength of our program?
It will, if we do it right. And the key to doing it right is understanding all the parts that are available for us as what are part of the assessments. And so, you know, the conversation about Lexiles is a really a key one. It's not something that we necessarily have used maybe in some of the younger grades, but not always across the board. And now it's something that's going to be available and can be a piece that we're looking at, and maybe a way that we can measure ourselves in a much more realistic, holistic fashion than we've been able to do in the past. So I think that's exactly how we need to build it into our exclusive measures, and but we need to not let the assessment and the interventions drive us. We need to take what it has and use it to drive our own instruction. And I totally believe we have the team to do that, and teachers who really don't want to fall prey to exactly what Pete was mentioning. And he's absolutely right. That can happen if you allow it. And so we need to be sure we don't allow it, that we're watching our the way we're rolling this out to do it correctly.
So I think the answer is it'll do what we need it to do. We just need to figure out what we want to do and how we want to do it.
Yeah, it gives us a lot of options. We need to pick those options and make sure that matches for us.
Perfect. Thank you. That answers my question. If it's okay with all the board members, I would like to conclude the ED report. Could I get a thumbs up, or are there
just my follow-up question? Just we're not, because I don't think I got an answer yet. We haven't, because we're losing, you know, changing from one system to the other. Are we losing all the data, the comparable data from Galileo to this system? Because the Galileo was our kind of over time measuring tool, how the school community progresses. What's the interface there?
I'll just jump in and share. So this is precisely why this year we're having 4 testing periods for our internal benchmark rather than the 3. So if you remember back in January when we returned from winter break, students went through their second Galileo benchmark. So we have the data to compare the regular October and January data points that we always have over the last years with Galileo, to monitor that progress up until that point. And now we're just wrapping up the first iReady diagnostic benchmark, and then we'll do the second one before we go into summer so that we have some growth data there as well. So this year we'll look at a little different because we'll have Galileo for the first half of the year, but then transitioning to iReady for the second half. But we'll be able to see growth from each of those 2 data points within each of the tests. And also what's really interesting is comparing the scores and the growth between October to January from this year with previous years. The data shows that we're pretty in line with the type of progress that we have seen year to year from October through January, which is really nice. We're even ahead in terms of more progress or higher scores in some of our grade levels than we are in previous years. But in general, it's a pretty average and consistent growth pattern that we're seeing this year with Galileo.
Yeah, because it's important that you have the, I mean, the last comment here, and then we should be moving on, because we had like we were able through Galileo, we were able to basically do a learning profile for the student over the grade years, right? And this could be a glitch in the system, right? And so if we continue to do the learner profile over the entire career at Goethe, that's great, right? So only comment.
Can I weigh in on two more comments?
Pete, can you let Danielle?
Does that mean yes? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'll give my time to Pete.
So I thank you. I didn't mean to jump to Q there. I was just so excited when we talk about testing. You know, it's so I don't view it as a glitch, and it's very common for systems to change assessments. I think what we wouldn't be surprised to find, however, is that in the first administration, that score is a little bit lower, simply because, except for the very youngest students who take Galileo for the first time, there's a certain look and feel to how, I mean, and I don't know the exact interfaces, but it's going to be, iReady will be new to all the students who are used to Galileo, for example. And so that will have a slight impact on performance. And so we would expect performance to be a little bit lower than it normally is, on his first administration. And that would do two things. One, it'll make it seem as if for some reason they're doing more poorly. And two, when they take the second administration and they get back up to their normal levels, it'll make it seem as if their growth was better than it normally is, which it likely isn't. So kind of to Frank's point, it's not so much a glitch, it's just we have to take the caveats into account. And importantly, I think you can't fully interpret what's happening until we get into the third and fourth administration of it, and things kind of settle in and everybody's used to the system. And the other thing, I think that's useful if teachers get very comfortable with styles. I think it'd be very useful not only for different subgroups and understanding where they are, also textbooks now get Lexiles are Lexiled as well. Not all of them necessarily. It's very useful and interesting to see if you do have textbooks that are to see how they align with A, grade level expectations, and B, the levels that the students are currently at, and potentially that could be useful for teachers as well. All right, sorry, I won't say any more.
No, it's all right. I think it's valuable. I just want to make sure everyone gets a moment to speak. Beacon?
I have nothing to add and no further questions. Thank you.
Okay. Chris, it seems like you're getting a lot of great feedback. I imagine you have a task force or a core group of staff that's going to be perusing through iReady, or is already doing it. It may be prudent to as you get through your iterative design of the platform and not just usage, but the performance measures to report back to the group. I think it may serve you well if you include Pete on a few of those meetings, the higher level meetings. If my fellow member has no objections. No objections.
We'd love it.
All right, thank you. And if that's all for the board, Frank and Beacon and Danielle and Pete, may we move on?
Please.
Thank you. All right, we are now ready for the Finance Committee report.
Okay.
So before we discuss, I move to approve Finance Committee the January financial for 2021.
I'll second.
Okay, and then I thank you. And just a quick intro comment. We haven't reviewed the entire financials this month. There was an additional work which caused Ryan to delay the certain documents. We have reviewed the check register and other documents, but not the full set. That being said, upon review, we recommend to adopt them, or Dr. Jones and I. But it's not the full vote of the Finance Committee, just full disclosure.
Am I able to start presenting, Dr. Jones?
Yes, go right ahead.
All right. Thanks for the introduction, Frank. It did take a little bit longer for the financial packet. It didn't quite sync up with the date that the Finance Committee met. The reason why is because I wanted to capture some funding updates for revenue around the special education funding from LAUSD. And the reason why I wanted to take that extra time to capture it is because January is a significant month. And it's significant in that that is the month when we report to LAUSD what our financials will be as of January 2021, our second interim financials. And the end result was positive, and I'll discuss that as we go forward. But just to quickly summarize the key points, I still have up here our running dollars for the CARES Act funding for learning loss mitigation. So as of December 30th, as you recall, we did expend all of the $148,000 from the Coronavirus Relief Fund. And what's yet to be spent is $30,909 that's due to be spent as of June 30th. And $14,000 in our gear fund that's due to be spent September 30, 2022. So I just have that as a reminder for the board, and a reminder for school leadership to make sure that those funds get spent by the due date. The other bullet point is just that these are our second interim report financials. So I just want to remind everyone that if these numbers are approved, this is what will be reported to the district in the interim report. Moving on to attendance. As you remember, attendance this year has no impact on our financials. However, it's still something that's important to track because next year it will resume and be meaningful again and influence our funding. So that being said, at the end of month 5, your school achieved a 97.7% average daily attendance rate, which is pretty darn good. A lot of the other presentations that I am giving are reflecting a challenge for schools to get the little ones to sign in and join class via distance learning. So you guys are doing a very good job at that. Any questions on attendance? Or we'll hold the questions till the end, I guess.
Yes.
Just very quickly on the income statement side, high level, we're forecasting net income of $103,000 for the year as of January close. The change from the prior month we were forecasting $95,000, so we're getting better. And one of the reasons why is total revenue increased by about $16,000 from December to January, and that was part of our LAUSD special education rate update. So our federal revenue was so very slightly lower after the update, only $239. This $239 that you see in red there, that's your federal portion of special education. It's tiny. I'm just pointing it out because it's the only revenue variance for federal. And in the state or the other local, that's the state portion of special education. That increased by $16,000. So total revenue is higher for the year. On the expense side, we continue to see variances from budget, and all of the variances from budget are due to the expenditures around the learning loss mitigation funds. However, we do have some true savings. So when comparing last month to this month, you'll notice that your school saved an additional $2,000 in certificated salaries. The reason for that, and this is true savings, and you're realizing it each month, the reason for that is because you had an amount for in-house substitute teachers in your budget, but due to the current situation, you don't have a need for these substitute teachers as you originally planned should you be an in-person school. So each month we have been realizing savings because it's not possible to spend those dollars anymore. On the classified side, we're also seeing some savings around the hourly staff. In the hours that we originally estimated, because folks aren't clocking in any overtime at all. And originally we thought, we kind of do a high estimate on hours. So you're realizing actual savings from salaries. On student supplies and operating expenses, those actually also went down a bit. And that has to do with, that increased a bit. So the biggest increase is your operating expenses. And with the increase in special education revenue, LAUSD also has increased slightly their encroachment fee for being part of the option to SELPA. So that's the primary increase in your operating expenditures. Other than that, there's not really much of a variance. The total change from last month to this month is about $8,000 to the positive. I think that's it until questions. Dr. Jones, moving on, I'll just touch on cash. Cash is projected to be $977,000 at year end. So about 50,000 less than budget. But remember, we are anticipating deferrals at year end, and we do have a larger than normal accounts receivable balance due to those deferrals. Other than that, I don't have anything else to point out. The next pages, we have the Word document that describes the notes to the variances, and then the last page of the financials have the check register that was reviewed by the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Ryan. At this point, I'd like the board members to review the check register for a few moments before I call the vote. All right, approval of the financials for January 2021. I'd like to make the motion's already been made. All in favor? Frank?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
Pete?
Yes.
Beacon?
Yes.
That is a yes from me. We will now be moving on to the Board Development Committee report. Beacon.
Hi, everyone. I want to take a moment to update you guys. We will be voting on our board engagement policy. I had the pleasure of serving on the strategy team, or the strategic plan team, and a lot of what we discussed was what makes our school unique. And I think the board engagement policy covers two really distinct ways that our school is unique and aligns the board with those things. And the first thing is like grit, or everything being figure outable. As I like to say, teamwork makes the dream work. And part of the way that we get to that is by using these learner profile traits that our students use. And so we created board profile traits when we're interacting with each other and engaging with each other and with the community. And when we're recruiting new board members, we hope to find people who are attracted to these and who align with this. Now, there are a few bullet points that were not on the packet that have been added since our meeting, but we have all of our learner profile traits that we have for the students, and we've kind of adapted them to give examples of how they might be useful for the board. So I'll just give one example for inquirers. Board members conduct inquiry and research in board matters and charter school matters. They display a passion for discovery. This would be by deeply examining fiscal processes and documents, by researching educational issues, particularly as they pertain to charter schools, and working to clearly understand another stakeholder, whether a parent or a fellow board member, an admin or a teacher. What do you mean when you say such and such? And that goes on for all of the 10 profile traits. And then Another thing we discussed is that Goethe is really a community, and we're a very special and unique community, and we have a lot of stakeholders who are incredibly committed and involved. And so what we've done is we've come up with what we consider to be the bare minimum for a board member to engage with the community. And part of that is really getting to know students. And the way to do that is through the monthly school assemblies. We do expect our board members to be fundraising for the school. And so therefore the gala, and then getting to know the school through an ED tour. And then board members are encouraged to attend any other school appreciation function. And we have many wonderful events at the school. If you haven't been to the Lantern Festival or International Flair, they're all just really wonderful. And then about building camaraderie, not only with the students and teachers and parents and staff, but also with each other. And so that would be by joining the biannual social events and the annual board retreat. And happy to answer any questions.
Beacon, if it's all right, I realized I should have made a motion. You want to make the motion to approve the document?
Yes, I make the motion to approve the document.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Second is by Danielle. All right, let's go to questions. Frank?
I looked at the document which was posted in the Dropbox. It looked good. What were the specific changes you indicated were made?
There were just a few more examples added.
Okay.
The different bullet points.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'm ready to vote.
There was a third bullet point added, and if I can also, there was we did do a change in the that the assemblies were made a third expected to go to one in the year, but we thought that also, we didn't want to get too many things listed, so we did change back. This was initially quarterly board social happy hours, and based on some feedback from last time, we looked at changing that to biannual, just twice a year instead of 4 times a year.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm ready to vote then.
Danielle?
Okay, now you can hear me, right? Okay, I just have one question. I know this came up last time about board members attending things at school like Lantern Fest, et cetera, which were mentioned in this report tonight. And I know the word encouraged was used. So that said, I think it's not like a mandatory, because I remember kind of Pete mentioning, like, sometimes it's nice to keep board members separate from those things where parents might want to engage with them on a topic that maybe doesn't feel like the right topic to engage with in person. So I just want to make sure that the encourage really is the word encourage versus not a mandatory.
I'm trying to find the.
I think you just
I think I passed.
it.
There we go.
Beacon,
Okay, there you
would you
are.
like to answer that?
Yes, it is encouraged.
Okay.
Pete?
No questions for me.
Right. There are none for me as well, and we will move on to the vote. All in favor, Frank?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
Pete?
Yes.
Beacon? I think that's a yes.
I did want to mention one more thing to the board members. Our wonderful team members, Latka Stone, brought up something wonderful about, for example, when a board member does show up to an event, it's really an opportunity for the parents to thank and appreciate that member. And we thought that that was pretty important, that parents have the opportunity to show appreciation.
I'm sorry, Beacon, your vote?
Oh, I said yes.
Okay, thank you. And that's a yes for me. let the minutes show that appreciation from parents is something that everyone is going to have to deal with. So we will move on to the approval of the audit report for 2019 and 2020. I'd like to make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I second.
Second from Frank. Chris.
Okay. This is something that happens each year. Typically this happens in December, but because of the strange year we're in, they moved back the dates and the timing on this. So we do need to approve this today. It is the audited actuals. So it's the audit report for last year, for 2019-20. And as the important things about this, there were no changes made from the unaudited actuals that you guys approved back in the summer in August. So that's good news. And there were also no findings, no negative findings for the current year, and there were no follow-up negative findings from the previous year. So that's what we refer to as a clean audit. And if there are any questions, I know it's a 30-ish page document that I'm sure you were riveted reading through, but be happy to answer any questions or specifics. Ryan can chime in as well.
Yeah, and I hope it's all right that I jump in real fast.
Sure.
So this document, I just wanted to let you know it's in draft form until the board approves it. I went back and forth with them a few times to make sure that everything tied out correctly. One thing that I did want to flag for everyone is on page 7. I noticed that there's still a typo there. So we can have them update it. But I just wanted to point that out because right there where Chris is at, right where you're at there, Chris, the organization located at 12500 Braddock, in that sentence, it says that you serve grades K through 5th instead of K through 6th. So that should be 6th there, because when you go to your attendance information, you have everything through 6th grade and you had a 6th grade. So there's a typo there that needs to be updated before this report can be filed. I just wanted to flag that for everyone. Other than that, I didn't see any typos. But what I did want to point out, because it's important for board members, and it would be important to me if I was a board member, is there is a page where you are all listed. And on that page, I believe everyone's reflected properly. So I always try to check that one out. It's page, page 19. So that's the first page I'll point you to before anyone has any questions. And then right there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members as of June 30, 2020. I'm sorry, 2020, that's right. So there's that page. And then on,
can I point out that we have that same issue here?
Okay. Yeah, when you update the front page, I believe it flows through to the different sections of the report.
Okay.
Can I ask a question now, or should we hold questions?
I think, Ryan, Chris, are we good?
I think so. I just wanted to point out that on page 22 and on page 30 is where you can find that comfort that this is a clean audit, there's no findings, and that the auditor's opinion is that there's no weaknesses in your internal controls or anything like that. So those are the pages that that confirm that this is a clean audit. And it's also the case that there were no adjustments from what you board approved as your June 30 financials. There were no adjustments. So there could be an adjustment if someone were to make a mistake saying that your local control funding should have been a higher amount or a lower amount, but that's not the case with us. We got it right. So nothing else for me to discuss, and I'm happy to answer any questions at this point, Danielle and the board.
Yeah, this question might just be nitpicky, but if you can go back to where you mentioned the board members were listed, and then it has the term expiration dates.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're all listed with the expiration date of June 30th, 2021. Is that date chosen because it's the end of the fiscal year? Because, you know, like naturally those who.
No, that should coincide with your actual term.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. Because some have to get reelected. Okay, then there's some things that are off here. So my term will expire in 2022 because, right?
The terms are expiring at the end of each year. With the in the parent.
Yeah, I'm in a 2-year.
Right, you're totally correct. I was thinking because the other way. That is correct. So that is not nitpicky.
Because everyone else is reelected again, right? Or reappointed?
That's correct.
Okay. And then the other thing is another nitpicky maybe thing is that doesn't the new parent sit at the second board meeting in June, right? So that means like as of June 15th. Oh, okay. It's the first. I never get this right because of all the drama from 2 years ago.
Yeah, and it still is vague. We have interpreted it to be you end at the end of the school year, June 30th. So everything terms expire at the end of June 30th.
Okay.
And that's how we're moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's not totally clear in our charter. It says two things.
Yeah, I remember that.
As we knew.
Very, very clearly. Fantastic. That was my only question.
So Ryan, is that a change that you can make? Because Danielle is correct. There was a 2-year.
We can make any change as necessary. We actually have lots of time to make updates and edits prior to filing this.
So everyone else is 2021. Hers should be listed as 2022.
Okay.
Pete, any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Beacon?
I just want to point out that we go to 7th grade, so.
That will be reflected in the 2021 audit. As of the 1920 school year, you only served grades. But that's correct, Beacon. You're 100% correct.
All right, let's move on to the vote. All in favor? Frank?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
Pete?
Yes.
Beacon?
Yes.
That's aye for me. Moving on to the approval of the school safety plan. I'd like to make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Chris, we're a little back on time, so if you can earn some of that back, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, this will not be difficult. This is the school safety plan. These are the documents. We wanted to be sure you were aware of all the different documents that exist. I am not going to go through them as it is hundreds of pages, and I'm sure you did not go through them each one, but just to know that these are gone through each year. This is for on campus. So these are all the emergency updates that we do back at the beginning of the year. And in the future, I think we're going to approve these probably in around November. So we're going to switch the calendaring on this. But this is just board approval of the school safety plan, the main portion of which is done by Marina Del Rey Middle School. And then we organize with them. And a shout out to Scott, because he also is the key person behind putting this together. So we wanted to present it for you and get approval at the board level.
Thank you. All in favor? Frank?
Did we have a motion?
Yes, 2. I made the motion and
I seconded.
yeah.
Thank you.
Frank?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
Pete,
Yes.
Beacon,
Yes.
that is a yes for me. Moving on to the financial and visa assistance for teachers from foreign countries. Let's see, there's two motions here. Is it okay if we combine it, Chris? Are they, or
Yeah,
can,
let me
or
just jump back here.
should they be distinct?
They should be distinct because it's two different legal groups. And that's because it's for two separate situations that we have in the past approved for teachers to encourage or to organize having our teachers who are coming from outside the country to be able to apply for a visa, or in some cases a green card, and in some cases both. And so that's what this is for. I'm going to give, and I'm going to keep it really short. Biggie, if you can give us the 30-second overview of these.
So let me move on item, what is it, call of order? Let me move
Sorry,
on.
yes, Frank, I got it. I'd like to make a motion to approve the contract with Sidman Law Group. Frank, is that a second from you, I heard?
That is a second, so now we can discuss.
Perfect. Biggie,
Yep.
your floor.
So yeah, it's two different contracts because we have allowed staff to choose which law firm they work with in the past. And now this is another example because there's always somewhat of a personal component when you work with a lawyer when it comes to your visa status. So therefore it's two different law firms. However, we have worked with both law firms before. We have had successful visa applications with both law firms. So from our perspective, they are both fine to go with. And since there are two employees at this point who are seeking the financial assistant for their visa, that's why there are two contracts to vote on, because they each chose one of those law firms. And why we need to do this financial commitment is because for visa, in that case, it's H-1B or green card, we as an employer have to give the commitment of sponsorship, and this commitment of sponsorship comes along with a labor certification, and that is what we have to pay for. There are pieces to the visa costs that are being paid by the employee. Let's say we could pay for them, but we can also have the employee participate in the cost, but some of the costs has to be paid by the employer. And that's why we're looking for approval from the board, because H-1B visa and green card applications are a little pricey. So therefore, according to our fiscal policy, we're asking for the approval of these two contracts. In the past, the school has supported the financial assistance for visa applications.
Thank you, Biggie. We will go forward with the vote. All in favor? Frank?
Are we having a discussion?
Yes, we can have a discussion. Go ahead.
I
Frank?
have no, I'm ready to vote on
Danielle?
item 1 and 2.
Danielle?
I'm also ready to vote on both.
Pete?
A, I guess I'd like to know what the actual cost is, and B, as an employer, are we able to include stipulations before agreeing to pay for it?
Sorry, Pete, for H-1B1, there are no stipulations.
Well, I know there's no stipulation, but can we put stipulations on?
No, not at all.
I'm not sure I buy that answer. I mean, as an employer, can we not put stipulations on anything for our employees? I mean, especially as a
Not-
charter school?
Not for a sponsorship, not for a visa sponsorship.
Yeah, that piece is my understanding too. And Biggie, do you have the costs that you can share? And then
I have the cost. So for the for a green card application, it is about around $6,000 to $7,000 for the legal fees. Plus, the school needs to do recruitment efforts, which means in order to get the labor certification, we need to show that we cannot get someone to fill a certain position that is within the United States of America. So therefore, we need to do some recruitment efforts, and that's ranging around $2,000 to $3,000 also. An H-1B visa application is anywhere around $3,500 to $4,000.
So just a little bit of background, Pete. I've hired a lot of staff that we've sponsored, and they're other than the fact that we need to advertise and find a local source. The stipulation is all on the employer, none on the employee. So, if that's all, Beacon.
I'm ready to vote.
All right, just one thing before we vote. I do believe there is, thank you to Pete, there is one quasi stipulation that we can have, which is that we can actually select the attorney that they're using for the sponsorship. So if this becomes as you pointed out, this is something we do for our German teachers. I would ask that, Chris, you go find an immigration attorney in Los Angeles and get us some sort of a wholesale discount, and request that all teachers who want us to sponsor them, and that is something that we can do. Otherwise, this will have to come to the board and we'll have to make a decision on it every time.
yeah, I could do that moving forward.
Okay, so let the record show, Chris will come back to us with an immigration attorney. My preference is that at the next request, the next sponsorship that we have to do, if you can get that lined up and dotted, then we can have a relationship with them, and it can be just a formality, and we can go from there. Okay. All right, moving forward with the vote. All in favor of the approval of the contract with Sidman Law Group? Frank?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
Pete?
Yes.
Beacon?
Yes.
That is a yes for me as well. The second motion, approval of contract. I'd like to make a motion to approve the contract with the Wolfstor Rosenthal firm. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, moving to a vote. Frank?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
Pete?
Yes.
Beacon?
Yes.
Excellent.
I think you should let the record show that the conversation about the entire, I think it also reflects on item number 2, because we didn't have a discussion about the matter.
Correct. So Chris, if you can just make sure that those notes apply to both items, both motions. Thank you.
Yes.
Moving on to the approval of the dictatorial powers. I'm sorry, the extension of powers. Or the slip of the tongue. Approval of, strike that please, Biggie. Approval of extension of powers for the executive director to extend until June 30th, 2021. Is there a motion?
I move.
Motion.
Second.
Frank, there is a second from Beacon. Chris, the floor is yours.
God, all dictatorial powers are necessary. I think you may be my kryptonite though. Yeah, I just think this gives us an ability to move quickly where we have to. I think we've kept the board informed and involved, haven't had to invoke these powers necessarily, but we are coming up on times where things are happening very quickly. So I think it's important, and we've ended this process. We do at the end of the month. So this pushes on till the end of the year.
Thank you, Chris. All in favor, Frank?
I'm ready to vote if you want to have
I'm
discussion.
sorry,
Just
discussion. Yes,
yeah.
yes, I apologize.
I'm
Frank?
ready to vote.
Danielle?
I'm also ready to vote, and I think Dr. Jones has been an excellent dictator since we've been voting for this starting in February of 2020. Whoever imagined we'd extended this long, and I hope this is the last time.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Pete?
Yeah, no questions.
Beacon?
Yeah, great captain. Take him any day.
All right, now to the vote. Frank?
Yes.
Danielle?
Aye.
Pete?
Yes.
Beacon?
It's a yes for me.
And that is a yes for me. Calendar and topics for upcoming board meetings. I would just like to point out, Chris, is the board activity calendar, is that up to date? But we can always, board members can always check it. Let's make sure that's on the website and up to date, Chris.
Yeah, it may be a previous version that's still on the website, so we can get that updated.
Anything new to add, flights of fancy for the membership? Frank?
I don't know whether we have to add the budget revision to it, because we're going to come back in March with a budget revision.
Oh yeah, it's on there.
Okay.
Yep. Well, the latest version is. I think it was supposed to be presented today, but I think we moved it a month, right, Chris?
I'm sorry, for which one?
The budget revision.
Budget, yeah, we'll be doing that with next month.
Yeah, Frank, I think I put the budget revision in December, and so
Okay.
every month Chris fights me on it. But next month is the month.
Okay, good.
All right, thank you, Frank. Danielle?
I don't have any suggestions.
Okay. Pete?
Nothing for me.
Beacon?
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Okay, then at this time, the board will convene to close session to discuss the matters described in section 7. Chris, you will take care of the breakout room?
Yep, we'll be moving into that. I just texted Jason, so he's going to be joining us. Going to ask Biggie if you can join us for this first session where we're talking about anticipated litigation, and we'll be bouncing back and forth, or I'll be bouncing back and forth and allowing the board to do their second part of closed session. So if there's anybody who's here when we return, we'll see you then. And if not, we will report out regardless. And thank you so much for being a part of our meeting today.
Chris, if you could stick the board members in there just for a few moments.
Yes.
We just need about a minute, and I'll message you when we're done.
Okay.